Who's speaking? Who was speaking? Does somebody have something to say?
Oh, just hi, Susan. This is Jeff, P&Z. You can mute me.
Okay, Jeff, good evening.
Hi, thank you. Have a good meeting.
Thank you.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. We have a full forum, we have a complete forum, and we'll go ahead and get the city council meeting started for the city of Montgomery. I'd like to call this meeting to order at exactly 6 p.m. For the invocation, TJ Wilkerson, could you please provide that for us this evening? Looks like TJ is off. Oh, there he is. I see. TJ, would you provide the invocation? I can't hear you. I don't think that he's got any sound.
He did a minute ago, evidently it's muted, but he's not showing muted.
So muted.
TJ, we're not hearing you.
Now it's muted, now it's unmuted. Nope, still can't hear you, TJ. Well, with that, I'll provide the invocation this evening so we can go ahead and get started. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us together. Lord, please put it upon our hearts to do the best by the residents of this city. Please, Lord, give us your guidance and allow us to do your will. Thank you for the many blessings you bestowed upon us and keep us safe and healthy. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 All right. So the next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. We'll start with the American flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
To the flag.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Visitor and Citizens Forum. Secretary Hensley, I didn't see anything come my way. Is there anything this evening?
No, Your Honor, I haven't received anything.
Really right along. All right, the first item of business on our agenda tonight is the consent agenda. Number 1, matters related to the approval of minutes of the October 13th, 2020 regular meeting.
I have a comment on page 4, if I may. It's not a comment as to the accuracy of the minutes. Ms. Hensley is, as always, exceptional. It's just a comment about the accuracy of a statement made during the comments. The statement that even a 10-year storm will flow over the top of 149 at MLK. I talked to Mike Muckleroy, and he says that he does not believe that Public Works has put out barricades at the intersection of 149 and MLK since the National Guard did their clean out work after Hurricane Harvey. So that's been 3, possibly 4 years. And I would venture a guess that we've had a 10-year storm in that time. So I question the accuracy of that part of Mr. Cotlin's report. So just a note on some fact finding that I did post the last meeting.
Anyone else? We'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we accept the consent agenda as presented. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires majority vote. It is now open for discussion. All those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries, and we will accept the consent agenda as presented. Next item of business on your agenda is consideration of possible action. Number 2, consideration of possible action on department reports. A, City Administrator's report. Richard?
Okay, and I'm going to run through most of the primary reports here. If you've got a question for one of the department heads, please feel free to ask them, or if we can't get you the answer tonight, we'll certainly follow up with you following the meeting. I want to start by mentioning the month of November, the council schedule is a little bit different. We only have the one primary council meeting, which is November 10th. The second council meeting, which would be in front of Thanksgiving, is typically a canceled meeting. We also have the canvassing meeting that will be November 17th at 6 p.m. And an update on the home grant. The fourth and final one of the homes being constructed will close tomorrow. And then the last resident there will be clear to move in. I was speaking with her a bit this afternoon. She was doing her final walkthrough. Let her know she can call me if there are any problems. She hadn't called me yet following, so I'm expecting that those minor issues that she had have gotten cleared up, and we'll see her tomorrow for closing.
Yay!
Planning and zoning, MEDC, on the agenda. They both have positions up with their terms expiring. For planning and zoning, it's on the agenda tonight. You have 2 positions that are open, and there are 2 qualified candidates who had turned in applications. And so that's, as I said, is an agenda item coming. MEDC, Montgomery Economic Development Corporation, their terms are up as of December 31st. So we're preparing to begin the process of putting out applications and seeking applicants for that. It'll be coming in a future agenda to City Council, but I just want to make mention of it and put it on the radar. We received 7 statements of qualifications in the request for qualifications for city engineer. And so we're beginning the process to go through those now. And I'll report back to, bring that back to council as we have more information on that going forward. For this week, I'm officially out for training. I'm taking the basic economic development course. For the most part, I'm available as City Hall needs me. If someone, whether it be staff or council, I'm available by email, also available by telephone as needed. So, and I'll call back between classes if there's something urgent. So staff knows how to reach me if I am definitely needed. In the development report, we're still seeing signs and activity for both residential and commercial growth. Residential, both permits and completions have slowed a bit. And that's not necessarily unusual as you get to the end of the year, but we're also about to see new lots beginning to open up early next year, both on the eastern and western parts of town. So I suspect those numbers will go back up in the springtime. And more or less that we'll probably be keeping the same growth track that we had for a while. Also want to note that the townhomes along Place Morgan, that site construction has begun in the last month there. I'd say earlier this week, it was yesterday, several of us toured under the GLO drainage study. Philip Lefebvre had some of the land cleared along both town and Anders Creek. Two members of council, Rebecca Huss, Randy Burley, myself, Mike Muckelroy from Public Works, Dave McCorkadale, Chris Rovnosky, and Bill Cotlin, the city engineer, and then the engineer from Brown and Gay working on the drainage study. We toured those areas, gave us some better insight into some of those areas, being able to put our eyes on those. I've discussed with the engineers. I'm going to be meeting with them. I suspect next week, to look into how we bring this back with a path forward to City Council. I envision this is primarily going to be a decision for the incoming City Council, being both a high dollar amount and of significant importance. And more than likely, I suspect we'll probably have to have a workshop to make sure we can get them up to speed, because you who have been around here for a while have heard a number of these things. Having to put a decision on the parts of some newer council members. We'll have to bring them completely up to speed with the information, and we'll see how any recommendations may change. I do want to add, based on the discussion last month, at the last meeting, Bill Cotlin is looking into a couple additional items that will come reporting back to council. One of those items is, the long-term cost of maintenance of facilities that I know was an item of discussion. Okay. Also in development, the downtown improvement plan, the MEDC approved a design firm for that planning. I'm currently working with them to have a final scope of work as well as a cost proposal. I anticipate that coming to City Council for City Council approval on November 10th. Moving on to Public Works, there were a variety of work orders completed that is routine for them throughout the course of the month. One thing I specifically want to point out, they installed steel casing to protect 3 force mains that cross ditches at a couple locations. And there's a photograph in the report of one of those locations. So definitely want to point out some of the work Public Works is doing to make sure that those areas were reinforced where those lines became exposed. Also at the parks, they've added kiddie cushion to the park playground areas, to help with protection. In both the Homecoming Park and community areas, they increased the painting for some of the Texas flag bollards. We can bring those out around the city. And the last time, thank you. The last time I have under Public Works is here in City Hall for employee safety. And we've upgraded the air conditioning filter system. There is an old style filtering system, and we've replaced that with a media filter style, with ultraviolet light disinfection. We do have some fresh air intake and a lot of air recirculation here. So I think that's a solid step for employee safety here at City Hall, especially in the midst of a pandemic where we have an airborne virus potentially circulating. With the police department, again, their report is in your packet. I want to note that they've begun resuming some of their training activities in the month of December. I do want to point out that officers are wearing pink ribbons and bracelets in observance of Breast Cancer Awareness Month throughout October. They are among our most visible members of the community, so I appreciate them being out there and being visible and showing support in such a manner. And in their report, you can see the number of various case numbers and types reported out there. Court report is pretty straightforward. There's a slight increase in the amount of cases and the collections for the month. In the utility report, we collected the annual franchise fees from Entergy. They were over $76,000. There's a large reimbursement item. It is for a police car that was involved in an accident that was over $39,000. We definitely want to report those significant price items to you. And the total of utility accounts is up 9 from the last month. So as I mentioned, while we did have a slight slowdown, in the number of residences, we're still seeing, a very definitive increase that's over a 1% increase in 1 month alone, just in the number of utility accounts. With the financial report, I know Anthony circulated that to you, about a week ago, since he's out on vacation this week. So I suspect anyone who had questions probably gave it to him, but if it's something you haven't gotten answered or recently noticed, I'd be happy to either take a look at that myself or save that for Anthony when he returns. And I believe those are all the items that I was reporting directly on. Where I realize I went through those pretty quickly. If some of you have any questions, I'd be happy to take those or put them to the department head.
I do.
Hey, Rich, go ahead.
So I've had, Mike, can you tell me who is in charge of trash pickup when they mow? Is it the mowing contractor or is it the city?
So the mowing contractor is responsible for picking up trash as they mow, but they're not responsible for picking it up on a daily basis.
Oh,
So
sure.
right now, if we're 4 weeks in between mowing, the mowing schedule, then it's going to be 4 weeks before, they're back around picking up trash. So
Okay.
they are responsible for doing it in the right of ways when they mow.
Okay. Sent you some pictures. It looks like they just mowed, I believe, and there was tons of trash. And we had a resident pick up two bags of trash in and around their house, not in their house, but in their yard and outside of their yard. So I was just curious as to what that schedule is.
Did it look more to you like they may have mowed over the trash and just ignored it?
I don't know. There was trash scattered, so I didn't pay attention. I just saw it over there. I can show you the pictures, but I was just curious as to when we expect them to pick it up,
All right.
and obviously when they mow. But
All right.
okay,
Thank you.
I just want to make sure they are picking it up.
Yeah, they're definitely picking it up.
Okay.
Hey,
Thank you.
Richard,
Yes.
quick question for you on Cedar Break Park, a couple of the parks. I noticed, do we have some folks who can go out there and put a little oil on those swings, especially that there's one that's a hard chair in Cedar Break Park. Sounds like someone's trying to cut the Tin Man open with a can opener. It's so loud. Just I don't know if that's something we maintain or not.
Mike can get someone over there to take care of that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You got that one, Mike?
I got it.
Kevin
I'm
likes
gonna make
to
a
swing.
work order for it. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Speaking of work orders, Mike, did you get one in for the Welcome Montgomery sign across from your mama's barbecue on the east side?
No, it's on our marker board and it's on our list.
Okay, that's different than a work order, I guess, then.
Well, yeah, the marker board's a reminder of what we need to do, but work orders are what we're trying to get done within, a week's time frame.
Okay, great, thank you. Richard, I had one on the financials on page, it was Anthony's report, page 4. I guess the packet, page 63. It was, I guess, some bank accounts, balances. I'm not sure if you're there or not yet.
Not yet, but I'm turning to it.
Yeah. Page 63 of our agenda packet or page 4 of Anthony's report.
Page 4. Okay, the half-page summary of balances.
Yeah, the last one on the page, I guess it's the lower section, it's under utility fund, money market accounts, utility fund. It says customer deposit account 0. That money must be maybe, are you there?
I'm looking at that, yes.
Okay, yeah, I would guess that we probably have, I'm guesstimating probably 90 to maybe 100,000, maybe a little bit more of our customer deposits. It may be somewhere else. I was just curious why that was 0, but it's probably somewhere else if it's broke out.
That's anything that we would be keeping for, I'm going to answer this question generally because I can't tell you the specifics without Anthony here, but anything like that we would typically keep for an extended period would be someplace in an interest-bearing account such as text pool and be accounted for in that way.
Okay, well, this is the text pool, yeah. Because I know we went over the budget. I didn't see a line item either also that showed, because that's really,
well, that, from a budgeting perspective of both revenue and expenses, the customer deposits wouldn't be listed there. They're because they're an item that's not typically one or the other unless someone is either coming in with a brand new deposit or going out with their refund of the deposit. So when that money comes in here, for instance, on your account, you lived in the city for a number of years, that's being tracked in the system, but it's sitting in a specific account. And so it's not going to move until we need to refund that to you.
Okay, yeah, maybe get Anthony to kind of highlight where it's at. I don't remember.
I'll be happy to, between him and I, we follow back up with you on that.
All right, thank you.
Hey,
That's
Richard,
it.
can you hear me, Richard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. That's all I want. That's it. I just want to make sure I went off and came back on.
Okay, well, hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thanks.
All right, well, if there's no other questions, then thank you. And I think I can pass it to Gulf.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have your September operations report. On page 2, page 3, we have your district alerts. If there's any questions there, I'll move on. Page 4 is your wastewater plant flow detail. Take a look at the chart, we did add a permit limit to that, so you can see realistically how far we are from the actual permit limit on a daily basis. And so you can see that we're pretty far away from that. So we're pretty healthy with our permit. Flow for the month of August, September was 4,704,000 gallons. Daily peak flow was September 9th at 234,000. Our average daily flow was 141,700, which was 35% of our permitted capacity. Page 5 is your discharge limitations and your effluent report. All samples were in compliance for the month of September, and we recorded 2.25 inches of rain. Page 6 is your water report. We sourced a total of 15,691,000 gallons, flushed 666,000, and sold a total of 14,875,000, bringing us to a 99% accountability. And below that, you can see the total connection count at 972. Page 7 is your groundwater production chart with a 13-month history. And page 8 is your water accountability chart with a 13-month history. Does council have any questions on that report?
Your permit value you showed on the wells, I guess we can see what page that is. Page 6 of your report. Permit value for the Jasper wells, 92.930. That's not percent or anything, is it?
No, that's your total withdrawal, 92,930,000. That's what you're allowed. To the right of that is what percent of that permit we have left. So we still have 56.63% of that permit left.
I thought our permit was like for 44 million gallons for the Jasper, around there.
So, and Mike, if I can jump in. So where it used to be before the Lone Star rules changes, you're correct. So when the new Lone Star came in and they wanted the loss, I think it's part of the lawsuit, they struck the reduction of 30%. So that got added back in. So you went back to your original permit amount from 2009 total qualifying demand.
But there's probably still a probability, good probability, maybe we had to go back under that ruling later.
Potentially, I mean, no one can really say. My guess, if I say yes or no, who knows what Lone Star is going to do. But as of right now, and I know they're going back through that process of resetting their goals and their demands and things like that. But based on their current rules, the reduction that was required in 2009 or from the 2009 demand, that was struck from the rules. So you got that capacity back on your Jasper wells.
This is a big game changer as far as our strategy of using our facilities in our town to reduce the cost, operating costs, big time.
It is.
Because as everybody knows, the Jasper, the Catahoula is very expensive to run compared to the Jasper wells. Okay. Yeah, that kind of stood out at me. I don't remember. I remember when we did the Catahoula analysis, it was around the 40-something million. So, all right, thank you. I had one other question. Your sewer rate also, the plant looks really light. Can you Can you double check that maybe tomorrow? I'm showing 155 a day average. So I'm not sure how you got to 141, but maybe check that.
Yeah, we pull that off of our totalizer at the plant, but we can double check the numbers, but I'm fairly confident that those numbers are correct. But I'll let you know after we check it. I'll send it over to you.
Yeah, and then the last question was, you said there's 666,000 gallons of flushing, or is that leaks and flushing? No leaks and flushing, everything.
That's a combination of leaks and then flushing that we do on a monthly basis, that Mike's guys do throughout the month, and that the fire department does.
Okay.
Or the fire department uses to fill their trucks and so forth.
Yeah, well, I was just curious because that's a little high compared to what you normally run if you look at your chart on page 8. But apparently, does that have to do with maybe the leak over there at across from Kroger's?
I would have to double check, but I don't believe there was a huge amount for a leak. But I'll pull those numbers and send those over to you as well, how we got those numbers.
Okay. Yeah, just kind of stood out. All right, thank you.
I got a quick question. This might be for Richard and Mike. I'm not sure. At what point during the year, I guess, do we discuss or set what our fees are going to be for hooking up sewers, for hooking up water lines, for business and residential customers? How do we establish those fees, I guess, is my question.
I would have to defer to Richard on that one.
Okay. Richard, you're muted, buddy.
I'm sorry, I must have pushed that by accident when I was clearing my
Was that
throat.
your, okay.
There's really multiple moving parts to what you're asking there.
Okay.
Generally speaking, you generally want the cost of those services, if you can, to be covered by those needing those services. So, if you're getting a new tap, ideally, the fee for a new tap will cover the cost of doing that. That's not always possible because you also want to have a set price for some of these things, at least with normal sizes. And what might cost $350 for one location, might be $540 for another location. So, but you try to have a standard fee for that. But those are costs that, generally speaking, that are looked at by Public Works, and they're discussed at the staff level before going into the budgeting process. So those were things that we had internal discussions on coming forward. Once a year, typically we do look at an overall. Will we need to adjust water rates, wastewater rates? Along with those can go the fee schedules that associate with that. So I think I gave you a broader view than what your question was, but I was trying to give you how that all together. Did I answer your question in there?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, there's probably maybe a one-off thing for Kevin offline. Just as I've been out and about, meeting folks and talking to people, it seems like I keep getting a lot of questions about why is our water so expensive. I'll be honest, I have a lot of answers to that. But I've been here for a year, and I can still tell you this is the most expensive water I've paid for my entire adult life. So I want to get my hands around that, why it seems that it's more expensive here than it is in the Woodlands where I came from. Also want to find out why some business owners are having to pay $24,000 to hook up their water. Those are things just kind of on my mind off recent conversations. So if this is a conversation for you and I, then great.
Well, I think one thing we can do in that regard is we can look at a comparison of our rates to some of the other areas around us and see how we compare.
That'd be nice.
I think that would be a good starting point. To be fair, one of the big players in Montgomery County that affects utility rates is how they've complied with groundwater regulation in those areas. Montgomery is not part of the plan that was of all the water systems that joined in with the San Jacinto River Authority. Typically those systems within those plans, they have higher fees just because they have the higher regulatory fee that went for that compliance. We've complied here internally with Catahoula Water. Now that, and Councilman Burley touched on this with one of his comments, now that the regulations have changed out of the groundwater district, we have the ability to look at optimizing how we will use the Catahoula well as much as an operations and a cost-based consideration, not a regulatory-based consideration. That may mean that we use the Catahoula water less. As he mentioned, it's our most expensive well to operate. So, as we, and these changes out of the groundwater district are pretty new. We're still needing some clarity as how they will be affected in at least the medium run to the long run through annual reporting and such. And so that there will probably be some changes to that as well. I do also want to add, ultimately, any changes that are recommended by staff in terms of the cost for water rates, those must be presented to council for approval.
But also I'd like to point out that we haven't raised rates for our base users in the 6.5 years I've been on council. But we did introduce a tiered usage fee where the more water you use, the more that it costs you per 1,000 gallons. So you'll find that large users are definitely feeling a bite, whereas the smaller users, people who are on fixed income, which when we first introduced this, 1/3 of our city was using 2,000 gallons a month or less, their rate stayed the same. So we were very cognizant of the fact as we made the adjustment to make our water and sewer fund solvent, which it was not at the time, that we made a lower impact on the people who would feel it the most painfully.
So that's where the need for, if you want to get break on flush and toilet, if you need to get a $1,200 water meter installed out of your own, is that part of that change that was made then?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm talking about the water meters. Is your sewer fee, the $1,200 water meter that you can purchase to drop some of the sewer fees? Was that part of what we did there?
No, you've always been able to have a irrigation meter, but it is, and Randy set up a calculation that anyone can do to determine whether having an irrigation meter is cost effective for you. So, and that is what an irrigation meter is. So if you have one, you're only paying for the water that you use because it's outside water. Obviously, you're not paying for sewer, because if you're using inside water, we assume that the meterage is paying for your sewer. But if you're using from your regular meter, the city can't tell how much of it is outside water and how much of it is inside water. So I don't think it's a $1,200 meter. I want to say it's a $500 or so. Mike, or Dave, can you comment on how much the irrigation meter is?
Yeah, well, the $1,200 is basically the tap fee plus the cost of the meter and your inspection fee and all that. It's roughly $1,200, but that's cost only. We decided to do the irrigation taps at cost only and not add any kind of extra fee on them, or to help promote, promote people that want to get them, give them a good incentive, to know that we're doing it at exactly what it cost us to put it in. That's what we're giving it to them at.
Right. So Randy's spreadsheet will tell you how many months it will take you based on your usage estimated to get that back. Because you can look at how much you use in a regular month in the winter versus how much you use in the summer to estimate how much you're losing or putting on your lawn or in your pool.
I get that. I guess I'm trying to, maybe it's just still a novice Montgomery question. Like I said, everywhere else I've ever lived, Magnolia, the Woodlands, Alvin, Texas, where I'm from, there's never separate sewer irrigation fees. I always had one meter and one bill, and it was always reasonable. So that's why I'm still trying to understand what the big difference is with Montgomery, Texas, as opposed to our neighbors. Everyone explained it to me. They explained the cost of flush your toilet. I get all that. It's still, at the end of the day, it still costs a lot more money to get water here. I don't understand that. I want to have an answer.
If you look at our rates, actually, though, when we did our rate study, we were significantly lower than our neighbors at the time. If you look at the actual rates, and then especially when you add on the fees.
That was 6 years ago, you mean, or recently?
No, because we've looked at it as we've gone on and done comparisons every time we've raised rates, and we haven't raised rates in the last 3 budgets.
Right.
Probably.
I think we looked at it since Richard's been here. We looked at 4 surrounding area cities in Montgomery County, and there we were right in the middle of the pack. But you also have to look at mud charges for people that are around us that are in muds. You have to look at their Senior Center River Authority fees versus our GRP fees also. And then you look at the sewer and water. So you got a whole basket of different charges.
Okay.
It's complicated.
Maybe I could do a little water one-on-one again with Richard or Randy after this is over. I have to make sure I have a good answer. So I need to understand it myself. But I still haven't been able to grasp the whole, separate meter and all that stuff yet. So.
Well, and help get some clarity on the question, Kevin. I'll see that we'll do an updated rate study with some similar utilities, and then I'll get back with you on that information. And ultimately, we'll distribute that information to council as well.
All right, thank you.
And the question on why it costs somebody to do a business tap, it has to do with the size of the tap that's required to serve them for the amount of water that they need. And like Mike said, depending on the size of the business, they might do a specific study to figure out exactly how much it costs based on the size of the tap and the location. And then a group that Randy sits on figured out exactly what we're allowed to charge in terms of impact fees for the impact fee, which is the cost to provide the capacity for new businesses going forward, so that existing citizens aren't paying for capacity that they didn't cause the need for. So we've actually, over the last 6 years, put a lot of time and thought into our infrastructure needs and how to put it together, how much we need going forward, how to plan it, how to pay for it, and how much it costs, and how to maintain it.
Keep in mind, 6 years ago, the water and sewer fund was not even sustaining itself.
Right. It was insolvent, and it's supposed to be an enterprise fund that is break even. You're right. And it was, not only was it insolvent, but it was under maintained and in terrible, terrible condition.
Another great place to go is to do the minutes. Go to our website, and you can, in the search bar, you can look up and you can see that it's been a topic of conversation at least twice since I've been on council.
Sure.
Right.
I was just approached last week by a business owner that's asking $4,000 to hook up my donut shop. And I said, I don't know. I don't know if that's it. I've just seen it.
Right. And Richard did mention the rates in the budget discussions that you voted for 2 months ago.
No, I understand that. I just want to get more of the why behind it. So like I said, a business owner is opening a location, so I got to invest almost 30 grand to hook up the water. I could imagine a donut shop needing to hook up that much because I'm not the expert. We all know this, okay? So I just want to make sure it's in line, that's all.
Hey, Richard, that may be a good topic for your new council after the election. Water and Sewer 101.
Well, I thought you were going to say for his new YouTube channel.
But Kevin, I'll work on getting that information. Like I said, we'll do a bit of a study, compare it to a number of other cities in the county, maybe some other similar utilities that we can equate to, and show you how those rates line up. And it never hurts for us to review those.
Yeah, let's not pretend like I'm the only person that doesn't understand all this. So, obviously, it's nice to have something simple to look at that anyone can look at, they could go to. So, for sure, that would help. I appreciate that, Richard.
Yeah, no, when it comes to things like utility rates and those use, I'll talk to you as long as you want, and you'll probably get tired of hearing my voice before we're done with the conversation.
Impossible. All right, thanks, Al.
Yes, sir.
Michael, are you still worried you're on the hook?
No.
Is there any other questions for Michael? All right, next is up then is the engineer's report.
All right, good evening. Item 1 on our report, the MLK CDBG project, still following up with Department of Agriculture. It's been on desk review to do the final closeout of that since May. As of last week, the grant administrator is following up every 2 weeks with the reviewer, so still sitting. Downtown Waterline, we have all the signed contracts. Attorney has reviewed them. They're now at Water Development Board for a final review before they'll give us the written approval to proceed with construction. Water plant number 3 improvements. I think we discussed at the last meeting very briefly. We did do the interior inspection back on October 7th. We've been coordinating with the tank manufacturer since then. We got the original drawings and specs from when the tank was installed to be able to compare the metal thicknesses, as well as get some additional pricing information on alternatives from them. And we had the manufacturer actually come out and inspect it as well to give their opinion. So we're preparing a written report with all that information to compare it all. We'll send that out. We're down at the final point of just kind of working out the final details of the differences in the cost prices. So our plan is to meet with staff this week and then send out a summary so we can have that discussion at the next meeting. On lift station number 1 replacement, just as a reminder, we're working on the damages and to close that out. Based on the certificate of substantial completion y'all signed at the last meeting, that stopped the time at 194 days at $500 a day for damages. And again, it was a 180-day contract, I believe it was. So obviously a substantial amount of damages. What we've gone through is we've gotten the contractor's days that he's requesting and the backup for it. So days that was due to waiting on energy or weather, etc. So we've made a summary of those. We've also summarized all the actual costs incurred by the city because of the delays. And again, we'll have that summary out to staff this week so we can have that discussion and come back with a recommendation.
Chris, when we get that, it's $3 billion. Do we sit there and negotiate pricing or costs on that, or how does what is their liability in the sense that we expected to negotiate?
I mean, it all has to come down to what is a fair negotiation. So the amount of damages per the contract, so $500 a day times the number of days versus the amount that the city is physical costs that the city can accommodate or calculate for that the city incurred because of the delay. And then so obviously we have the cost that y'all paid, because if you remember, this was the number 2 low bidder because they had a better time. So that difference is obviously has to be covered. It was only $5,000, but it's still $5,000 between the first and second low bidder, because you picked him because he was supposed to get it done months sooner than the other guy. So that cost has to be covered, plus the cost of inspection and everything else that happened during that. So right now, I think the numbers, and I'm not going to give you specifics, I don't have them in front of me, but there was, I think a $30,000, $40,000 delta between the cost incurred and the damages accounted for, including the days that they requested. So that kind of gives us then the range. It's okay, and also having your attorney involved is, what is it's fair, reasonable damages of actual cost and damages that the city incurred versus what the maximum amount they could pay per the contract.
Do we take lost revenue and tax money in account?
I think, that is one of the arguments, is because one of the arguments is definitely the delays due to that in Chick-fil-A. Because that was, part of their project was getting, so that first 30 days, they were supposed to have the lift station demolished, and it took them, I think, 45 to 60 days, if I remember correctly. I have to go back and look at those specifically, but yeah, that is, you could say that caused Chick-fil-A an additional couple-week delay, which has a value to it. And all that has to be considered to determine.
Yeah, they're selling $30 a day of Chick-fil-A meals, and that over 3 weeks, significant, right. Big number.
Right. So we'll have that with the city this week, or with staff this week, so we can come back and get the final summary of it and move forward on getting that one closed out. Moving on to page 2. We have a pre-con for the Hills of Town Creek section 4 tomorrow. So they'll be starting with that single family section. Those are the plans that were approved at the last council meeting. Moon over Montgomery is still going through the process. Just a preview at the next council meeting, you should expect to receive a variance request, or excuse me, you'll go to P&Z and then council. So a variance request for a driveway spacing, which they can't comply with just by the shape of their lot and what their neighbors are. But then also they told us this week they would be requesting a building line variance on the front. So we haven't received that in writing yet and their justification for it, but we'll be bringing that to you coming up. Other ones, Town Creek, so we've been talking about the clean out. So obviously, as Richard mentioned, we met yesterday with the property owner. Also, TxDOT was out there last week. If you saw them cleaning out the culverts at 149. So they are coming back yet to put in riprap and additional stabilization on the slopes to protect it. But they found a significant amount of debris. I think, so there's 3 10 by 10 box culverts underneath 149. 2 of the 3 had about 2 to 3 feet of debris in the bottom, and the third one had about 6 feet of debris in it. So significant amount that they've cleaned out and opened that area up. So we should get some improvement through there. And now what's on their list is to come back and install the protection of the slope so it doesn't cause erosion issues. And they were just waiting on materials for that one. And last item, page 3, Atkins Creek improvements, also by TxDOT. We're working on some clarification from them on exactly what they're needing to help just get the right people talking to TxDOT to get the right of way they need to be able to complete those improvements. And that is basically it, unless you have any questions.
Chris, about the bridge, I remember we were talking about the 1-year warranty. We were having some issues with the work that was done. Where are we with that? It's kind of dropped off your report monthly. So
for the bridge, Buffalo Springs, it was completed. So those warranty work was taken care of, and it's.
But are we getting years worth from the day that was completed? The patchwork was done, or is it a year that the bridge was done? Period, because we're up to that year.
Correct, from when it was substantially complete. So that time has passed.
Okay. So then what happens when if it's compromised or there's issues? Is that on us?
It is.
Yeah, there's still some bad spots there.
Right.
So before they're completely off the hook, can we ensure that we are in a good position?
We'll take another look. They are out of it. They're out of their 1-year warranty period. They made the repairs that were evident at that time, and then additional. I know there's some additional rough patches that are out there. So we'll take a look and get with staff or with the Public Works and see if there's some patching they can do to help out with that area.
Chris, did you get a chance to look at the I guess State Farm parking lot drain where it comes into the northeast side of the bridge?
I did. I saw that, and I have not had a chance yet, but I'll see the engineer that worked on that project tomorrow and mention it to him, and then also send a note to Shannon Salisbury with State Farm, the owner, and bring that to his attention to have him address it. Yeah, I definitely see what you're talking about, because you can see how it's eroded around the outside of it and then also starting to undermine it underneath. So,
yeah, I appreciate you looking at it. Thank you.
Good thing. And that is all I have.
All right, anyone else? Motion?
Move to accept the departmental reports as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the departmental reports as presented. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires majority vote. It's open for discussion. All those in favor of accepting the departmental reports as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and we will accept the departmental report as presented. Item number 3 on your agenda: consideration of possible action regarding review of the City of Montgomery draft comprehensive plan.
All right, I'm going to give you some brief overview and background information on this, and then turn the floor over to Dave McCorkadale, who's been working on the meat of the comprehensive plan. And this has been something that's been worked on for some time. One important thing to note for the record here, this draft comprehensive plan was developed through a series of 5 community meetings held during 2019 to receive input from local residents and local businesses. The city held a virtual town hall meeting on July 8th, 2020 to review the original draft of the comprehensive plan. The actual draft document was developed by Walter Peacock, a community planning specialist with Texas A&M University's Texas Sea Grant and Community Resilience Collaborative Programs. Comprehensive plans guide public policy in areas such as transportation, utilities, land use, recreation, housing. They serve to assist City Council when setting budget priorities for future projects. Additionally, and one important factor to consider, the plan serves as the legal basis for future land use zoning, and it is required for many grant funding opportunities. Yeah, please note that the population-based numbers need to use census numbers versus locally derived numbers, which means the city will need to update these numbers within the comprehensive plan after new census data becomes available to the city. And that comment there also is a good lead into, this is not meant to be a final document in the sense of it'll always be in this form when adopted. Comprehensive plans are meant to be reviewed periodically. They're meant to be updated. They will change as time goes along. They're not the final word on how development will take place. They're your starting roadmap going forward. One item that came up recently in our discussions with the firm in the downtown development planning is, grant opportunities for certain items. Having a comprehensive plan is something that becomes necessary for that. And, having this plan in place, puts us, with a foot forward in getting some of those grant opportunities in the future versus not having a plan like this. So this is going to be something that will continuously come back to City Council in the future. It's something that's been worked on a long time. I know some members of this council have been participating with this process since before I was employed with the city, within the early discussions there. So this does go back for a while. My recommendation on this, and my clear preference on this is that City Council consider adopting this tonight with directions to staff that we clear up any administrative errors and corrections, spelling, punctuation, and address any of the comments that council might offer to us tonight. This is something that we really need to get in place as soon as possible, at this point, so we can work together with the downtown planning. And this is in place for that. Also, keeping in mind, as I said, and it's an important point, so I want to reiterate, this will come back to council with regular reviews and as necessary items. Probably the first review of this, they'll come back, will be when we need to update the census data numbers. So with that, I will turn it over to Dave McCorkadale to kind of run through the basics of actually what is in the plan.
Good evening, everyone. I've got I've just shared my screen if you can see it. This is just a very brief review of the document. I won't rehash the things that Richard has already explained, but with that, looking at chapter 1, as he mentioned, the new census data that is going to be something to incorporate. The intro and just of the city and the history is good. I think there's opportunities to build on it, and we certainly could. But again, that's a piece of it that's less of a priority to get right than something that involves a big line item budget or a capital investment. So chapter 2 on the process, again, there were 5 public meetings, and the comprehensive plan itself was a grant-funded thing that we got through Texas Sea Grant. That's not to be confused with the downtown work that the MEDC engaged the Texas Target Communities program on from A&M. There was a cost that the MEDC had paid for that, but the comp plan itself was a grant-funded thing through Texas Sea Grant. Chapter 3 talks a little bit about the land use zoning. One of the upcoming items that we can look at is whether or not we should add different types of residential districts. So council's not always being asked for a variance for a closer, lot density than what our ordinance allows. Should there be those variations in densities? And the adoption of the future land use plan, which we now use as a guide, but it's not an official document in terms of policy, and it really ought to be. Chapter 4 dealt with housing, and again, there's always a need to support all housing types to make sure that we don't leave out what a lot of planners call the missing middle, if you've heard that term. And again, it just addresses that there's often a need for middle class housing and middle class jobs. And those are two things that we want to make sure, and that's two of the things that this document helps to guide you guys and the city as whole. It's a fast-moving market in terms of housing out here on a growth edge, like we are in the Houston region. But again, that's just something that we just need to continuously be aware of. Chapter 5 in transportation, if I can get it out there. There was a multimodal awareness that through the community meetings for folks, or a desire that folks had for things like cart paths for golf carts, or just the connectivity of golf carts to different places, making sure that we have options for sidewalks that connect all of the great assets that we already have. Chapter 6, the economic development, again, a focus on the primary jobs, as well as kind of the tourism and the wedding or / destination industries. Community facilities was a focus, or a continued focus on parks, keeping in mind that some of the community facilities we have less of a direct impact on, meaning the things like the school district, the fire department, and the ESD, the other aspects of the ESD. And Chapter 8, the guide on implementation, was essentially be able to find funding, and there's a lot of resources in there. Some may or may not be applicable to us. And again, as Richard said, this document really is one that we ought to break out every year when we start the budgeting process and say, hey, what are the important things in here? What did the residents, what did they tell us that they wanted through this process? And now, do we have the money to pay for those things? So, in summary, I certainly feel that it's a great start, and it's what we need for grants, a foundation to build on. I would look at updating this document at the rate that the city's growing every 2 years until we see some sense of normalcy over 2 years in terms of, the growth and development that we see. And again, as Richard mentioned, we're available to answer any thoughts or questions that you have, during the week on this, if there's, more in-depth stuff. And I'm also happy to take any questions that you have on it here this evening.
Hey, Dave, so when we're considering making changes, because this is a living, breathing document every 2 plus or minus years, does that also include the community again? We would have another number of meetings and gain feedback?
Right, and we might do fewer meetings, because what we might be doing in, so when we look at this stuff for next year for the census data, we just look at, Chapter 1 of the comp plan, which really, in terms of a community meeting and an engagement of the community, one topic is a whole lot easier than, kind of trying to hit them over the year with 5 topics. So, certainly each time you update that, you're able to get a sort of a better focus, but it absolutely does involve the community on every, on every update.
It was a great exercise to be a part of.
And I think one of the things that Walter was pretty clear to emphasize is that this doesn't commit the city council now or the next city council to spending to specific plans. It's a guide to what residents at the time thought. It's like, kind of laying out in a specific format a way of thinking, but it's not a must-do list. It's really you can use it as much as you want or as little as you want. And certainly what Richard was saying is that the only thing that we must use it for really is achieving a check in the box for certain grants that we have opportunities coming up for.
And that's correct. And I think one important thing, I like throughout there as well as you're thinking about some of the development in the area. A lot of development that's gone on for recent years, may go on for a while. There's a lot of locally driven development, a lot of developers who have local ties. That won't necessarily always be the case. When you have interest looking into your community from the outside, one of the things they look for are what are the local requirements, what are the local guidelines. People at that level, whether on a regional or statewide level, they're looking for your comprehensive plan. They're looking for that as the window into what is the city looking for, what's the starting point. They deal with these with cities all the time. If Montgomery doesn't have one, Montgomery doesn't look as prepared as those other areas. And so that's part of the importance of having a comprehensive plan. I think we're well beyond the point of should Montgomery have one or not, but that's the importance of having one. And it's like, as time goes on and we continue our development, we're going to be looked at with eyes that aren't just the more locally driven ones. Recent times you've seen development plans coming to you, with 30 to 50 lots, 100 lots, 200 lots. Those numbers will continue to grow as long as there's land available. In terms of the numbers of lots and the numbers of acres being designed and put in front of you. I know a lot of you who have been here for a while, you have seen growth coming, but you're really still at the point where you've only just seen it begin.
I also like that it gives us the legal backing to do some things like potentially adopt the land use plans using.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Is that you?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. In this comprehensive plan and their housing, will they provide like grants for like revamping or helping people on homes, or not just building homes, but to go in and refabricate them or something like that in these houses?
So I think that
it's a comprehensive, but does it just stop at Klepper and east of Players Market, or does it take
sure. So what this plan would do, and so what the idea of what it would give us the information for is to be able, again, so when our census data is here and we've got the updated stuff, then we're able to really focus in on the grants that the city is or would be able to get. And we know, so there's not a specific thing in this document that would do that, but it's the guide that gives the council the direction to, again, to pursue those grants in the same way that they did the home grants. So.
Yeah, and for some of those grant programs, having a comprehensive plan may be a requirement. For others, it might not be a requirement, but it would definitely be looked upon more favorably because we had one.
Hello, Dave.
Well, obviously,
So
Yeah.
Go ahead, TJ.
I was going to say in this, just reading the comprehensive plan, I guess one of the big things that I felt like they left out was, even though they kind of mentioned it, was the birthplace of the Texas flag. And it looked like that would be one of the big selling points of would be included in there around. I just don't think all of it would be developed just around downtown. I hope they can implement and put some maybe some sidewalks to connect some of these things. And I looked at their community facilities, and hopefully we can have some ideas going forward where if we got community facilities just beside the community center that we bring in, see how we can get a YMCA or something like that, where, you know, community facility where everybody could use those type of things.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Guys,
Hey,
if I'm understanding correctly, what you're saying, Richard, basically, and everyone, is this is the plan, but it's not the plan. We have the community plan so that we can qualify for more grants, get more money available, because you're probably going to want to know, well, hey, what are you use the money for? Well, here's what we're thinking, but it's still all open to interpretation and change. We seem to have a plan, right?
Well,
So I think you're
answer your
totally right,
question.
Kevin. I was going to say, I think Kevin's totally right. It's basically a summary of what our current situation is, as well as laying out some of the things that our citizens want, which is more opportunities in things to do, like TJ said, more walking paths, more transportation links, things like that. And so how we get from where we are now to where we want to be is really the implementation part, where, you know, we would apply to grants and say, this is what our people want, and this is how we think we can get there, but this is where we are. So, and we have this whole study that says we've done our homework.
And it's meant to be continually adaptable because needs of the city will change, desires of council, desires of residents will change. And as certain development takes place, it may become something that those priorities may change as well around at the construction as it occurs. And so it's always been meant to be a flexible situation in terms of it will adapt as the city builds and the city evolves. But all of the important decisions of the future regarding various planning, as land use is approved, as any variances may come to council, those things will still come to council. This document does not override any future decision of council, and council is not obligated by this plan in making those decisions. It merely would signify that the time will come that we then need to re-look at and consider revising the plan when council decides it wants to go a different direction.
So, yeah, but looking at it, it looked like all the sidewalks and everything just developed around between Klepper and 105. So it doesn't.
Yeah, they weren't. While that image may have been in there just as a graphic, TJ, I do want to reassure you that there's not actually a sidewalk plan right now that's in the document. But what it would say, what this document would do, would say, hey, these are important to the community. Let's get, and that's where the council then is able to form, either a couple of y'all to lead a committee on sidewalks and develop a sidewalk plan, and then work on the prioritization of them, how we're going to pay for them, which ones qualify for grants and things like that. So that's kind of the role in that, process that this document has, I think.
Hey, Dave.
Dave, got that on.
Established timeline.
Will you say that one more time, Tom?
Have we established officially or unofficially any sort of timeline, or are we just going to keep talking about this?
For the downtown, or for the sidewalks, or for the comp plan itself?
So let's say everything. Have we prioritized and then maybe come up with a timeline? Because I know a lot of people are excited about this, but we don't have anything definitive to share.
Right.
To when effectively we really want to start turning over dirt, ground, and how long do we think it's going to take? 3 years, 4 years?
Sure. My recommendation on it would be so each of the sections, and so the one on transportation is going to have some goals, and then in that chapter 7 there's going to be goals and objectives identified. And so the way that the process would normally work is the city would adopt the comprehensive plan, and then say, okay, these were the goals out of this topic. which one of these, how, that's a decision that you guys make then to say, okay, these are the goals, that we believe are important. Here's the price tag for the first three, which ones are important to, the residents that we represent, and are we willing to pay for it? So, but once you adopt the document and then start, working on the goals that are in the document, that's when, you're really able then to put a timeline to it,
Okay.
and it stops, becoming, sort of a dream, and, really starts to become something that you plan on and are able to put a timeline to.
Okay, thank you.
And
We'll be
Tom,
to say, or Dave or Richard, we'll be out of line to say that over the next couple of council meetings, we go ahead and find our top three, top four, so we can say approve and say we're moving forward with these three projects in December to start in January. I mean, like Tom said, get things going.
Government moves a lot slower than that.
Well, yeah, I get that.
well,
So I say at least have to be approved by then, I guess, is what I mean to say.
Kevin, I mean, to really touch on your question and also to answer, I'll respond some to what Tom said. That's one of the reasons why I'm recommending, approval tonight, because then we can take the step at staff of going, okay, now we're not talking about putting the comprehensive plan together or getting it approved. Now we can talk about planning how to start to make some of these details work. The tie-in with the downtown planning, is one element, but that's one element. Some of the things that we've talked about at a staff level are, what grants are available and what programs are available to assist the city in developing sidewalks that link neighborhoods to downtown or connect neighborhoods to schools. There's specific grants in that line that Dave has been looking at, trying to see how we can line the city up for that. And that is just one example. Those things apply, whether it be zoning and roadways and all sorts of development items that run through there. But the first step is getting this plan approved, and then staff can take the next step. And, and then also some of it becomes a policy decision from council. Are there items that we need grants for? Are there items we need outside funding for? Are there maybe some smaller local projects that we're willing to pay 100% for because either time is a factor or it's not a large enough size to consider going out for a grant? Those are all factors for consideration. And then prioritizing them and then letting staff go out and start to make those things happen. But the first step for all that tonight is if you can approve the plan.
Sounds good to me. Thank you, Richard.
Yes, sir.
Dave, I had a question, a couple of them really, but there's a lot of cleanup work to do with this whole document, really, because a lot of times it calls Montgomery City instead of the city of Montgomery. It says Montgomery City quite a bit through the document, which needs to be corrected. But,
right, that's a census term that they'll use. That's the way that our I guess our census name is Montgomery City.
Well, it should be the same name regardless of the whole document, don't you think?
Right, and again, that's something that I've not gotten into the corrections of. I, made a pass through on some of the stuff, but, I do agree with you. My preference is to use just our normal name, either, the city with a capital C or Montgomery. It's sort of like calling someone their entire, given name every time you talk to them. It'd get kind of weird.
Yeah, one or the other, at least be consistent through the whole document, but it's all over the place. But can you pull up on the screen here, Chapter 4, housing? While you're doing that, I like a lot of this, but some of it, it doesn't meet my standard at all. One of them was transportation, the other one's housing. While you pull up the housing there, this data on here is, excuse the language, but garbage. And I heard what you said, Rebecca, about maybe just having a document period, and that gets us in the gate, and then we can do the grants, which would be great. So it doesn't matter what's in here. But the problem, what's in here is how they got to the goals at the end. And if we go to the goals, then some of it's not going to be correct if you use some of this data. Now in the
So
housing.
if I'm here, Randy, on chapter 4, do you guys see chapter 4 because it's on the
we
shared
see
screen?
it.
So, so where do you want to direct me to here on chapter 4?
Under type of housing there, that paragraph, it talks about Montgomery, kind of in the middle of that. Montgomery has a high percentage of family living in mobile homes. Mobile homes account for 14.5% of the household units and are larger than a number of multifamily housing. That's not correct. That's not correct in no means. I'm not sure it was ever correct even in that year. But regardless, things like this, this is what influences the goals and the decision-making on the housing, this kind of data. So from my point of view, I would like to see at least this section corrected. Where we stand today, I think Tom asked a year or so ago, where we stand on in the city residential compared to multifamily and compared to mobile home. Mobile home is only 3%. They're showing 14 here. Residential in the city, homeowners, single homeowners is about 60%. In multifamily, we're almost 38%. But none of that, you know, those numbers being that far off. So I guess the question is, how often do we update this data to give us good goals, accurate goals, to really guide council and to follow through with our budget and with our plan? Because if we have stuff like this so far off or so far behind us, if it was true to start with, and we already passed it up with all our multifamily facilities we install, low income and all, we're going down the wrong wrong road.
Right. And this
follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. I absolutely do. And again, this is part of that census data that when the census comes out, you know, my view is there's not, you know, rather than, you know, physically, you know, us, I guess having to, you know, to use the data that, you know, that we then have to vouch for. Using this data is an accepted way for planners to work. We are just at the unfortunate time and space of a high growth community at the very tail end of a major census period. And so right now it's the data that we have to work with. So going back to correct some of that stuff, I'm, you know, be more than happy to do with you though, if you want to do that at some point.
And council already knows and has dealt with the fact that, you know, the community has reached its tolerance level for multifamily housing on one hand, but on the other, there's 25 more acres of multifamily already zoned that way and PDDs in which we don't have any control of how it develops. So regardless of what this number is, you know, we're unlikely to rezone things, or sorry, you, returning council people are unlikely to rezone things multifamily, and there's no control over the things that have already been zoned multifamily. So to me, this is very unlikely to change decisions that are made in the short term. So, and the conclusions at the end, again, are not being driven by, or the conclusions that council makes, I think, are not being driven by this.
Yeah, that's a big distinction between the conclusions of this report and what council come to, may be two different things based on the current data. That's very important.
And I totally agree, but it's very complicated to start picking your own data for something like this. And it's a slippery slope. Like Dave said, I'd rather just do it and just put an asterisk on there on our copy and just say, this data is incorrect. We know it is, and we know what we know because we know who our neighbors are, that this is just not right.
Well, isn't it possible just to pack it with the understanding that once the 2020 census data comes in, we'll update those numbers then?
Right.
And that's the plan. That's almost certainly the first update will be turned around on a pretty quick basis, but that the full 2020 census data isn't going to be available for a while.
You talk about a couple of years, right?
January 1st either.
I was going to say, but before that happens, we need this for activities that are coming up within a month or two.
Yeah.
Well, I actually like the mixed use. I think there was an example, Dave, you had in here on the south side, I think of 105 area in there where you had apartments, you had different family homes with some commercial. I thought that was a nice layout. But
That
I'm
was
just
something
worried
that
about
the
having
students-
bad data.
Students came up with that. Yeah.
I was going to say that was something the students did for the MEDC funded project, and they were super creative and came up with some really interesting ideas. I mean, it's obviously they had free reign in their minds with private property. No, they didn't do a lot of measuring or respect for private property. They thought that the government could just build a road here, put some public parks there. But they had some really neat ideas on how to work the combination of commercial, retail, and green space and residential.
Yep, and I've actually talked to a developer that I had told him about this idea, and we maybe have some in the near future come to fruition. It was a beautiful rendering that they had of that mixed use parks and all that.
Yeah, especially like the idea that 105 was not fronted by this gigantic shimmering parking lot, that it seemed much more inviting and a little bit more country, and the parking was all hidden by the amenities.
Yep.
Yeah, Dave, so back to my point, I guess you're on page 151. Scroll down 2 more pages, I guess. Page 4, under recommendations. So there's a way to, because everybody's going to get a chance to read this, right? I mean, everybody that wants in the community can look at it. I guess we're going to post it, right?
Right.
Okay. Because you look under this recommendation page, it says right here, I guess under type of units needed, this is exactly what I'm talking about. If the data is bad, then the recommendation is going to be bad. It's telling you that we need to do more. City needs to be more multifamily housing units to accommodate the people who live in mobile homes. So that's not a right statement there.
Once that comes out, we get that information. That's when this will be. Again, this is a living, breathing document, so it can be updated and current.
But Sarah, what I worry about is when you put a document like this that really has some really bad spots in it. I look at it under bad, and people start looking at it. I hope not to send them off in the wrong direction after they see it. If they understand that it's not good data they're looking at, or garbage in, garbage out, I always say that they get turned off to the whole process, or maybe not even want to look at it or get involved in it, even after we do update it. So I'd like to maybe have some kind of, when it does go out, have some kind of, not a warning, but some kind of notation saying that a lot of this data is old data and it doesn't apply anymore.
Well, we could certainly list it with a note that, that the city is, will be, making modifications to the document when the 2020 census data is available.
Not the
That will automatically be making other changes along the way as well.
Okay.
So who's going to be the owner of this document?
The owner is the city. I don't know if I follow.
I guess the person that's responsible to update it. If it's a city, it could be anybody.
That'll be the director of planning and development.
Okay.
That's a good. Yeah, that'd be a good volunteer for it. So, to those points in the recommendations, again, I don't think anybody would be, would actually have had a couple conversations over the past few weeks, and with guys that I've not had a relationship with in the past, and they were very familiar with, kind of the city's stance on, a multifamily project. So there is, an understanding out there, and I don't think a document like this is gonna, confuse someone who's really looking to do a project. I think, philosophically, I think, that most planners would say, to the mobile home versus the multifamily, just in terms of a sustainable housing, or I guess, a housing that is able to better withstand storms, just from a structural standpoint, I think was the point that they were making there. Not that in practice everyone is going to do that, but it's a more robust structure than otherwise. So.
Yeah, well, I saw that part too, but I think it's also pointing to more multifamily, which we've already done quite a bit of in the last 3 or 4 years. So,
right.
And you are going to go back through this document, like I said, and I can get back with you offline. There's quite a few there's some numbers like in the transportation that are, the display, I guess the figure shows one number and then the paragraph left, 10,000 off or whatever. So the different points I can show you.
Right.
I think if that counts under administrative, I think that would go with what Richard was suggesting earlier, is that we approve it subject to including administrative changes.
Right. There's a lot of formatting that I've literally have not touched any of the formatting, which I think is probably obvious from you guys, looking at this, but we've got, but then, yeah, if some of the data is not accurate, then, certainly that's something that we can work, one-on-one on, getting right. Again, it's not a disputed idea or concept or goal. It's a hard number that we can all agree that that's the right number.
Well, let's go with the census data that Walter's researchers pulled up, even if we disagree with its representation of Montgomery today, just so we don't have to find our own sources, verifiable sources, and have to justify them. I think that would take us down a rabbit hole that could last months. But
Right.
Let's make sure that what's in the document matches what's in the pictures.
Right.
I would count that as administrative.
Yep. Agreed.
But for its flaws, I think it's good to have something to start with. It's always easy to edit in small chunks or adjust in small chunks once you know what to start with. I mean, I think that, the city has tried and failed at this before just because it seemed like such an unmanageable thing to get through. And now at least we have, chapters. At least now we have things to go out and search for information and, areas that we can tackle and either do or change or dream about. So I think it's a very good starting point, flaws and all.
I'll add that, agreed. It's hard to bring a document as large as this to council, for discussion. So, taking those smaller bites, chapter by chapter would be much more doable.
Definitely.
Right. And I'd like to take on board TJ's comments that, our history is so important to us. So perhaps when we update chapter 1 with the census data, we spend some time adding to our history, because, this was done by somebody who doesn't live in the community and to whom the history is probably not as important as some of the other policy wonkish stuff. But, our history is super important to us. So it should show in who we are as part of this document.
Dave, is the goals all in priority order?
No, sir. They're just there in whatever order Walter had put them in.
Okay. Just curious.
And again, those goals don't even lock the council into having to act on each one of the goals. If there's one that the sitting council, wouldn't want to address, they're certainly not, bound to do it. They want to, speak with the constituents that, identified that, or once it's our document, right now, kind of at least where I'm at in terms of, being able to edit things, is I'm editing someone else's work, and there's a limited amount of, kind of line, or I guess there's a line out there where I've edited more of their work than what they'd be comfortable, with me editing, with if it's our document, and of course it can be ours, but and it is ours, but again, in terms of my work versus his work as a planner, there's just a limited amount of things that I wanted to really dig into before bringing it to you guys.
I understand what you're saying.
Disadvantage to accepting the document tonight as opposed to November 10th? Does it make a difference at all, Richard, if we do it now? Or wait till November 10th? So maybe things are a little cleaner.
Well, I think it's highly preferential to try to do this now, unless there's a specific reason not to. And part of that is because we're coming to terms with the downtown development design firm, and then we can let them know this is in place, and that can be part of the early planning process of having any grant opportunities that match.
Hey, Dave, did did the students go to Homecoming Park?
I know that some of them did go down there, you know, who were working on the recreation stuff.
They did.
Yes,
They
when
did.
they went on a tour of the city, we went down there.
Yes, they did.
And I think, you know, that again, that one of their recommendations was linking Homecoming Park and the school, you know, with the community, you know, kind of that leads in, you know, to the Klepper Street area and, you know, as well as over east, you know, toward the Waterstone area.
Well, I figured that would probably come in once those homes and things. That's going to be an easy fix there. But I was thinking about the Homecoming Park and all that coming in. So I have no doubt that those new townhouses and the houses going to be part of that, all that sidewalk and stuff. That's probably a given. But I was just interested.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, you know, to the park section under the public facilities, you know, I think, you know, as a council, you know, if you guys, you know, when you say let's set the priorities for what we're going to do with our parks budget this year, you know, that's the time where you guys are able to direct that money to any of the parks you want to, you know, send it to, and, you know, to figure out the best way to, you know, decide on what enhancements the residents would be interested in.
Well, Dave, not trying to speak for TJ, but I know one thing that what he's partially getting at is that we have a topic that we're going to talk about at the end of the meeting tonight. We want to talk about sidewalks or walking paths to connect MLK all the way to downtown, putting a basketball court in Cedar Break Park. I wonder maybe, is that what you're getting at, TJ? Would you want to include those with this project?
Yeah, because the only thing I see, you know, just they mentioned Homecoming Park and it's a comprehensive plan, but to me it doesn't seem like it's inclusive.
Right. That makes sense. I understand. So maybe we do put some sort of verbiage in here. I get it. I know what you're saying. We're going to change this anyway as we go. So my question earlier was really, what's the rush if we do want to put some things in there that are more inclusive of the entire community instead of just the one downtown area? What's the rush of getting done tonight as opposed to saying, hey, we want to have this verbiage in here just so that the folks that are concerned that they're being left out, if you will, have their
or you
evidence.
set it as the first project, the sidewalks project, which was what actually most of the residents specifically said that they wanted. And that would be, I think, a tie-in to what Richard and Dave were talking about in terms of what there was a lot of funding for was a tie-in with safe schools routes. And then we had talked about there might be GLO use for the GLO funding for that type of thing. This might be the time to get all of that done in one big bang.
Yeah.
So again, rather than change it with putting a specific plan within this document, which again is more of an assessment of where we are currently than a specific document on how to get to the future. It just says that people want more amenities. It doesn't say specifically what amenities they are. The drawings in here are just the stuff that students did for MEDC to make it pretty. It's not a plan that the city has, or it's actually not at all related to this project.
Yeah, no, I understand that completely. I can feel the concern, and you feel the desire is to have.
So we can take the pictures out because they're not actually relevant for the most part to what is the words in the document.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on this?
So Walter's a planner, so he likes to put plans in. But again, the plans were paid for by MEDC for a different purpose.
Yeah.
Is that the plan?
Do you have any thoughts on this, Tom?
I'm sorry?
I just want to ask you, what are your thoughts on just adopting the document now? Have you seeing it later?
I wouldn't mind waiting for 2 more weeks because, you know, based on what you said a little bit earlier, I think there's a couple of things that we do need to address.
Kevin, an alternative to that also could be, if you know what those items are, you can approve it with the direction that we include them.
Okay.
I mean, that's also doable here because like I was already asking for approval contingent upon allowing us to clean up the administrative items. If you want us to include more specific language to these couple items that you've mentioned, just direct us to specify that language in there with the approval and we'll go ahead and put it in.
Yeah. What do you think, TJ?
I probably vote against it.
Yeah. You want to see that I understand where you're coming from. You want to see that inclusive part. You want to see the north end and part of this whole plan. I get it. It's almost more of a.
But if the language is in there, then what else do you want, TJ?
Is it in there? Can you show us where that is? Maybe I missed it.
No, I'm saying if Richard puts it in, then.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I was saying is make part of the motion to approve, the administrative cleanup I mentioned, and to include the following items, list those items, and then we'll go ahead and put them in there with the approved. That'll be the approved version. And then that way we can.
I feel like most of council wants to see some of the stuff put in there first, Richard.
I think Richard is saying he'd like to have it taken care of so he can work on the other thing that the EDC is working on with the downtown project.
No, I understand that.
It'd be nice if we could have everyone getting what they want all at the same time. So if you could suggest the language specifically that's good for you and Tom.
Yeah.
So you have the floor, Kevin. What is the language that you're looking for?
I want to make sure everyone's happy. It seems like Randy's got concerns about the data, which I understand. TJ's looking for an inclusive, comprehensive plan. So I'm trying to help you with the words with this, okay? And Tom is also saying what's in our 2 weeks to get the wording that we want in there correct, right? So what would a motion maybe sound like? Come on, team. That would include all of those pieces.
With regards to Randy, some of the language where it's based on census data, we're just not at liberty to change that until we have new census data. So where he's talking about just kind of cleaning up some of the local fact items, that's part of the administrative cleanup. With regards to, you mentioned, both you and TJ have kind of mentioned a couple specific points. Yep, give us the direction to include those locations in there, and then we will fold that in there.
Man, they come back to TJ. What do you think?
I'm still holding to my gun on that one. I can see that they talking about the park and connectability with the school through a sidewalk, but they got to realize, they got to give it to school district. That's probably one of the only schools that's locked with a fence around it. Most of the rest of them you can just get up to. So having the sidewalk across the street to the school, to the fences, I don't see that.
I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna sit down and be quiet now. But I feel like there's enough folks on the call that would rather wait 2 weeks. So I'm gonna agree with them. So whoever wants to make a motion, they can. I'm gonna go ahead and I suggest that we spend a couple of days with Richard and get the verbiage that we all are happy with in this document, and then we come back on November 10th and vote to accept it then. That's what I'm gonna say.
So TJ, are you saying you're gonna vote against it no matter what?
As it is presented tonight.
So
would you be interested in working on the verbiage together, approving it tonight, but working on the verbiage, and that we can also in the motion you can say, I will be working with staff to find the verbiage for the ideas that I have. And then
I probably would, but I when I talked to a lot of the people about this before, even tonight, they didn't just like somebody visiting and having a picture of the homecoming park on there. They said, well, what are they going to do? And they say, well, they're talking about connectability. So what is that going to do?
Remember
to Lincoln.
Foundation. We can change. It's living and breathing. It changes. And it's just the foundation that was created in order to get us exactly that, a foundation. And then it can move and change. And that's what we're asking. What would you like to have changed? about the connectivity.
Okay, I guess, and from a staff perspective, let me ask, because I guess what I'm asking is, several of you are obviously saying you wanted specific things included, in order to get your sport to pass in 2 weeks. If it's not these items we're discussing tonight, then I don't know what it is you're asking me to get included in 2 weeks.
I think we'll talk about it over the next 2 weeks, Richard. I think that you, me, TJ, and whoever else, we'll talk about it and have it ready for November 10th. I don't want to sit here and continue to pressure TJ. He feels what his constituents are telling him, so I think we should respect that and continue forward and get it where we want to be. So in 2 weeks we can talk then.
Yeah, no, and I'm not trying to pressure anyone. It's council's decision, but I guess.
See,
like I said,
they're basing everything on a lot of things. We talk about that comprehensive plan. We looked at Baja and Martin Luther King. That took over maybe 5 years before it was complete. It always seemed like it takes a while for things to change on that part of town, on that end. So the people that, not just those, we don't have just certain areas we represent, but the people that I know that call me about this, they have a lot of concern about it. So I'm going on what they want.
Yeah, I think the irony here is that, it's like I'm asking for the plan to be approved so I can start to work on those projects, but council's asking me to hold off working on the projects so we can spend more time working on the plan.
Which project are you talking about?
I can do that.
Which project are you talking about, Richard?
Well, first is, working with the downtown design firm, to have this in place in front of the approval of that agreement. And so they can know from the beginning that we have the comprehensive plan. The first next sidewalk that we've been talking internally with staff, trying to get built is connecting, the area of Homecoming Park, the elementary school, to the downtown area. That's one that Dave's been looking into, connectability between residential areas and schools, for the right grant opportunities to come up, and that plugs back into having a comprehensive plan. Yeah.
Right, and I get that. I'm just trying to figure out what's the urgency. Why do we have to absolutely get the thing approved tonight? What's changing between now and November 10th besides the election?
Well, I guess where I'm lost is I don't understand the details you're wanting me to include in 2 weeks.
I think it's about. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Richard.
Yeah,
I think more about.
I'm sorry.
Kevin, let Richard answer your question, please.
Yeah.
I said I apologize for cutting him off there.
Okay. No, I understand if I'm asked to just to make some changes and bring it back in 2 weeks, but I'm unclear that it seems that council is saying we've discussed some of these points, and I've suggested, well, let's include those points if that's what council wants, but council doesn't want to pass this tonight, including those points. So if those points aren't what the question is, I don't know what you want me to include 2 weeks from now to pass it. And that's, I don't know if it's just, are those points not the issue, then what is the issue? I guess I'm confused.
I get the feeling, Richard, it's about principle and inclusiveness. That's what I'm picking up. I think that's pretty clear. It's not about no one wanting you to work on something. I think it's about, which even if it's a symbolic gesture, if you will, we want to see certain parts of town included in this plan. And I completely understand what TJ is trying to say here. We know at the end of the day that we're going to do the right thing for all of our residents. We know that. But out of respect for that part of town, I think that they deserve to see something in this comprehensive plan that says, hey, we know you're there. This plan includes all of you.
Okay.
And let's just get that verbiage in there and then approve it in 2 weeks. There's no reason not to. I don't understand.
Kevin, did you go to any of the public meetings?
Physically go to the public meetings? No, ma'am, I wasn't in here yet. What else does that make?
Who on the call went? I know I went. I participated.
I'm just going off what TJ is telling you right now on the call.
Well, yes, and it's loud and clear, and we can add that into the motion. There's no, without, I mean, that's getting it started quicker than later, sooner than later.
Right.
But I feel like that was the goal early on in the conversation.
Yeah, I get that, but I just wanted to make sure that everyone's comfortable on it, but clearly everyone's not.
I concur, and I went to all the meetings, and I think in respect for TJ and his constituents, I think he makes some good points. I don't think it's unfair to wait. I want Councilman Wilkerson to be comfortable with the document that we're going to vote on.
For one, they're
I
all
don't
of us.
disagree.
They're all of
Right.
us.
I don't disagree, but I just think that, you know, Richard's looking for more guidance and to be articulated, and that's not an unreasonable position either.
I would go along with that also, because I would like to add a couple of items myself to the transportation. I think that was a real lame section there. We have that was a major issue. I went to the meetings. That was a major issue, and to me, reading the transportation section wasn't a whole lot of meat in there. It was motherhood statements mostly.
Yeah. Understand.
I'd like to make a motion to table this for 2 weeks.
Second.
It is moved and seconded that we table this item for next council meeting in 2 weeks. This motion is debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. It is open for discussion.
And I have the second is Kevin Lacey.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well, while this is open for discussion, I would like to ask if council is going to pass this motion, we would like to request from a staff level that any of council's comments, if they be sent to either Dave or myself by this Friday of what you're looking to have either amended, included, changed, edited, so we have the time to work through that and then follow up with you to make sure we're getting that taken care of. Because obviously I don't want to go back on the 10th and find out that we've fallen short on that.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Yeah. I think this is a really important document to get passed. So if it's not done on the 10th, there's going to be issues, because it's really going to hurt the city to not have this.
No, definitely.
It will hurt the MEDC first. And that hurts downtown, that hurts the people who make a living here, and that hurts all of us.
Yep.
I think everybody understands that.
Yeah.
All those in favor, go ahead. All those in favor of tabling this till the November 10th meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
No.
The ayes have it, the motion carries, and we will table this until the November 10th meeting. Next item on the agenda is item number 4. Consideration of possible actions regarding appointment of the following Planning and Zoning Commission members. Place 2, currently held by Nelson Cox. Place 4, currently held by William Simpson for 2-year terms ending October 1st, 2022.
Okay, the city received applications from 2 individuals for 2 open positions on the Planning and Zoning Commission prior to the October 16, 2020 filing deadline. Carrie May and Miriam Walker. Each of the applicants has been verified to be a city resident and a registered voter, and those are required in order to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission. The attached is the application form for each applicant and the membership and appointment requirements for the Planning and Zoning Commission. Ms. May and Ms. Walker was advised that they would have the opportunity to attend this meeting tonight.
And Miriam is here. I saw her earlier. She's under Drake Talley's name on the screen.
And I know I saw Ms. May's name earlier. I don't see her name specifically showing at the moment, though.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, we have 2 positions and we have 2 applicants, so I suppose that the choice is fairly clear. Or not? Nobody's agreeing with me?
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yes.
Right.
I was gonna say, or after the last item, everyone's afraid to agree with me. They don't know what they're getting themselves into.
One item that needs to be mentioned though is they do have specific places. So
Okay.
if we can assign a name to a place.
I move to assign Ms. May to place 2 and Ms. Walker to place 4 for the 2-year terms to expire October 1st, 2022.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, second.
It's been moved and seconded that we assign Ms. May place 2 and Ms. Walker place 4 for our 2-year terms ending on October 1st, 2022. For the planning and zoning, this motion is debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. It's open for discussion.
There's neither one of them will be chairman, right?
Well,
That
it's
doesn't
up
go
to
along with the position, right? They vote on it?
The P&Z board itself, will choose its own chairman from its members.
Okay.
All those in favor of Ms. May taking place 2 and Ms. Walker taking place 4 for the Planning and Zoning Commission for the 2-year terms ending in October 1st, 2022, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, the motion carries. And I'd like to personally say thank you to Mr. Cox and Mr. Simpson for all of their work. They've been on there quite some time and they've done a great job.
Absolutely.
Really?
They have. Item number 5, discussion regarding sidewalks, street improvements, and street signage.
Okay, this item came about because of a recent discussion I had with Councilman Kevin Lacey regarding future construction related to sidewalks, street improvements, street signage. And so I wanted to bring this discussion out for all the city council. I thought it kind of paralleled with the comprehensive plan. And it seems that might be true than I understood based on some of the discussion there. And I see Councilman Lacey nodding. So at this point, I'll throw the floor open for council discussion because I think he's ready to elaborate.
Well, thank you, Richard. Yeah, this goes hand in hand, I believe, with everything that we just went through, we just talking about. Obviously, our constituents throughout the entire city are interested in what we're doing. And throughout some discussions I've had with TJ, as well as some discussions at some meetings and gatherings that I've personally been invited to up on the north side, they seem to be some real hot buttons, especially on MLK and connecting downtown to 149. So some of the things that came up, and as a matter of fact, while we were standing there one evening, on MLK, I know it's got a couple of speed bumps. One of the things that was suggested is how about we raise the speed bumps to 2 or 3 inches and then add maybe 2 more speed bumps if we can't do a sidewalk down MLK right now. Because every time I've been out there, people have been flying, up and down that road, and they do. In between speed bumps, it's Indy 500 to the next one. We saw a few launches as well, just like here on Berkeley Drive. Another thing that we talked about is the fact that we do have a lot of folks, and this is council discussed this before. I think Becky mentioned this a few years back in regards to connecting MLK area to downtown. Maybe not via sidewalk since it doesn't quite, I think that's what you're saying, Becky, the grade is a little too steep, but maybe some sort of a walking path that we could build or construct, because I personally have almost, I probably didn't almost hit someone, but I felt like I was too close for comfort driving down 149 with folks walking up and down that street. So it's very important to not only myself, I know that the mayor and Becky and everyone else, you guys have all talked about this in the past, as far as getting, some better walking areas for those folks. A couple other things that we can talk about, again, as part of that total package, some of the street names. One of the stories that came out is, again, I don't know a lot about this, but like Community Center Drive, granted, there used to be a community center there that was torn down with the promise of building a new, bigger and better community center, which was never done. The renaming of the street to Baja, the folks who live down there don't really like the name Baja. Baja means the lowlands. And TJ, please elaborate. You and I have talked about this a lot. As far as your feelings on this and what you'd like to see done for that area, that part of town.
Yeah, just that's one of the main things. We were just talking about the name change. It's only just one sign, but I know the people would have to agree it. More of the people, a lot of them already do but they would probably have to make a name or come up with a name. Baja coming off of MLK just doesn't go together. I could see Young. It's a Young on that street. It's Andrew Young was with him, so that was the easy fix. Going through town here on 105. We travel 105 and we see Spirit of Texas Bank, the flag. And I always wonder why that street was even and not Flagship Drive all the way through town, because you got Stewart be the Stewart statue there at Cedar Break Park. And you probably wouldn't have to make signs. Either we could just put a sign like they come out of Conroe, they say Lake Conroe Parkway. We might put West Flagship Boulevard all the way through and not have to change the sign. And it still could be Eva Street, you know. Just little things to try to tie it in together. Flagship only have one building or the apartment complex off here. And I always wonder why it was that and not the main drag through Montgomery, since it's tied in with the birthplace of the Texas flag. One thing that brought this attention to me, because looking at Conroe, when they did the flag thing down there, they got the statue of Stewart, and they don't say the town, it's Montgomery County, birthplace of the Texas flag. Slowly but surely, they're going to, as they did everything else, they're going to try to take it. So we got to have something to hold on to and promote through, you know. Was it just a big sign or not? But the only other thing that I have is what Kevin was talking about, just the, you know, maybe getting with them and see if we can come up with a name for changing that name of Baja. But then a lot of people probably don't know what it means.
I said, I know we talked about changing that name to Baja, and I think you were going to champion that. Is that right? Might ring differently.
So I got 3 different names. So I got to get the guys down on the street, the people to agree on one name that they would like.
That's progress.
You know?
I was going to say, we talked about it several years ago when we changed the name to Mac Washington. It was easy because there was only one house on the street, so it was pretty easy to get them to agree to it. But you were going to look into that, so this is something the city was amenable to.
I got 3 different names that come up, so I got to get them to get together to see which one they want.
Yeah, the city's been amenable to it, but we can't force agreement.
Right. They all holding to the gun, so we'll see. If not, I told them, I said, well, it's fine with me if you leave it there. I understand. But we'll get that. But it's just that we look at the history of Montgomery. I just feel like we ought to be able to tie some of these, tie it in together. You know, don't have to change the name. We could just put that sign up, Flagship Way or something through there, and it's like Lake Conroe Parkway. It's still 105 or West Davis, but when you see that sign, you know they call it Lake Conroe Parkway. And somehow we got to cross them all together. I don't know who Eva was. I've been trying to research and find that, and so I can tie it in, because I can see the Lone Star Parkway. I can see the funeral home with the Sam Houston Star on there. And as you go through town, if you was a visitor through here, you would say, well, you just look at the bank, and then you wouldn't know all the way through that this is supposed to be the birthplace of the Texas flag.
Yeah. No, I understand.
At the flagpoles and the banners that are on some of the streetlights.
Right.
That say birthplace of the Texas flag.
It's kind of like where I grew up in Alvin, Texas. I live off of Highway 288, but since it's the birthplace of Norman Ryan, it's also called the Norman Ryan Expressway, you know?
Right.
So I see what you're saying there, TJ.
But you know, I'm fine if we leave there, fine, because, you know, we kind of set, but we need to get out of that, because we losing a lot that's passing through here. We got the bike race this coming weekend. Somehow we're missing all that because we're not tied into it. They come through here every week.
Well,
and we're missing out on that. So it's just an idea.
Wait, hold on. The bike race is coming through here and you want to get tight in house? Sorry, TJ, I'm trying to follow.
No, I'm talking about they come through every week, and our chamber or whoever it is, the Chamber of Commerce or who, they should tie into that and have, that's a big bike race. They come through every week. We should promote Montgomery through those bikers. Those bikers could come in they come through here riding every week just about. So it could be some kind of race, some kind of a deal that they tie in together. That people would look, hey, I'm going to Montgomery this weekend. The bike race or the bike ride. But we're missing all of that.
Or the car shows.
And the car show, we're missing tied into random with the rodeo you have all the time. People like big belt buckles.
There's a car show this weekekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we tie in car shows quite a bit. The Chamber and MADC. And
we ought to see how we can work with Rand. You know, those big Texas belt buckle with a little dot on it saying Montgomery. Where did you win that? Montgomery, man.
I don't know. It's cities.
No, they don't have to. I'll back out. I'll leave it alone. I see what you're saying because the city is like that. I understand. It's not into that, but we're missing out on promoting the birthplace of the Texas flag. Not saying that we have to have a rodeo. Not saying that we sponsor the rodeo. You know, even though those bags that we were giving out to the people, instead of just being plain red, white, and blue like the flag with the star on it, for new people coming in.
So we got a myriad of topics here we can outline out between. Yeah, no, I get that. For what this item was, for me personally, this is all for everyone else to discuss. Richard, I want to ask in regard to minimum of speed bumps and walking path from MLK up to downtown. For me, safety is the first thing for me to focus on. Do you think that that's something that we could do outside of the city plan so that we can get it quicker, or do you think that that's by approving this document by November 10th, we could use that as a springboard, as like Becky said earlier, your top two projects are speed bumps, walking path.
Yeah. Well, getting into details like speed bumps, traffic control, that's not really something that's part of the comprehensive plan, not even necessarily something normally council would approve, maybe not, but it gets into, into traffic safety, and that really starts with me getting with the police department and getting them out to go study the area and see what, see what is the best way to approach the situation. They're the professionals in that regard. The chief and his senior staff may have some options available that might not be what you or I would think of first, but to them might be more natural for the situation. And so that's where I would start with that. And maybe the answer is, you is putting more speed bumps out. But sometimes I know I've seen it where people have come to city council with a request for speed bumps, and it turns out that actually their concern is better addressed with some other action by the police department. So that would be where I would start with that. And the answer might be speed bumps, and maybe it's just relocating what we have or reconfiguring. Maybe it's raising them. Maybe it's something different entirely.
That'll work.
Hey, Richard, lately, have you put that speed limit digital sign down there? Radar?
It has been down there.
It's moved around, and I know it's been down in that area. I don't know that it's been when it was last there.
I think that would
help. Just a historical note on the TxDOT thing. TxDOT has a thing with sidewalks not being a certain grade, because over the grade it's not ADA compliant, which is why they haven't been willing to do a sidewalk going up from Lone Star Parkway up into downtown. So I think what Kevin was suggesting is that we need to be creative in either convincing them to make some sort of nature path or something like that so that we can get the safety that we really do need, or we somehow need to get something in the right of way, because they do own the right of way, which makes it complicated. So we just need a sidewalk by any other name, but not, don't call it a sidewalk.
if the TxDOT dollars would include a sidewalk. I haven't seen the actual plans for the TxDOT up on that part of the road, but it doesn't have a, don't know if it has a sidewalk included. I guess
Yeah,
not.
they won't call it a sidewalk, because if it's a sidewalk, then it has to meet certain specs that it can't meet because of where it's located. So
Extended shoulder, perhaps.
Yeah, a bike lane or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. And did TxDOT, or is that in the plans?
it has been before, and then they've taken it out unexpectedly without any discussion. So, you know, I don't know, you know, they've done a lot of things without much consultation. So it's very difficult to know what exactly drives their decision making.
Aren't we getting closer to, well, with this comprehensive plan, we were also going to get with TxDOT, and because we haven't widened 149, we were waiting for the comprehensive to get those plans in order as well. And perhaps that's where we can talk to TxDOT. Now we're getting to the forefront of actually getting to use those funds, and that to that time, to be able to talk to them about extending those shoulders and getting that bike lane in.
All right.
Right, for sure. With the downtown plan was an important part of getting with TxDOT and presenting them with a unified plan with all of that.
And TxDOT has multiple projects coming up. So they have the 105 improvements as well. That's going from essentially all the way through town, and then the 149 improvements. So 2 different timelines, but 2 different projects that they had planned work that I think the scope is still to be defined.
So we could get extended shoulders in there then.
You can ask.
Perfect. Have you seen them? I mean, we're not going to call them sidewalks, but I guess bike lanes is what they would be called.
No, and I was looking for the old plans, and so I found a plan set from 2017, it looks like, and the sidewalks didn't go past, it didn't go past, I think, Klepper at that time, but I remember for at one point in time, there was a conceptual that it went further, but I can't find the exhibit right now. There were so many exhibits and ideas that floated around that time. It's just,
I was going to say it was quite a while ago that they had some on there, and then they struck them off for some other purpose.
Correct.
So what can we do? Plan, does it go to 1097? I know that, isn't that where it's going? From 105 to 1097?
That's correct. That was their original limits.
Yeah, okay. So they'll at least be doing work all the way through the area that we're talking about. So it'd actually be a great time to ask.
Correct.
Yeah, the culverts make me the most nervous because that's probably where they're the least flexible on, you know, doing, extending work or working over on the shoulder, that sort of thing. But even if we could get, you know, something and then worry about work over the, over the streams.
Yeah, the Town Creek Bridge is probably going to be a little choke also.
Correct. Yeah, those 2 crossings of the creeks. Now, I know, and again, they've gone through so many revisions. We have to see what the current is, but they're doing work on those culverts. So, you know, if they can put in 10 extra feet so they can have that expansion and have some capacity. If they're already changing them out 10 feet isn't substantial. But again, what the current scope of work is versus what it has been featured.
Hey, Chris, isn't it TxDOT's job to go through and clean those branches that they had no cover anyway without you asking?
You would think. I don't think it's on a routine basis. So as soon as, you know, I feel like, especially this time, they were responsive to getting out there. So we need to keep on asking and get it on their list as soon as we see, you know, every TxDOT crossing that they have, that they're checking on them.
Okay.
I guess my question is you're talking, you know, TxDOT, and I get all that. It makes sense to, you know, get them to help with that. But how long have we been waiting up to this point? And how much longer will it take for them to get that done? What's stopping us from just getting it done as a city? Because it's a safety issue. It's a very, I know everyone knows that. What's stopping us from just doing this ourselves?
We don't own any land.
Okay. So what would be the answer to that?
getting permission to work in the right of way.
Okay.
But then if Tex Talk comes and widens, then we're gonna put down sidewalk and then they're gonna come and take them up.
Right. So is there a way to commit? That's a great point, obviously. Is there a way to speak to them sooner rather than later, Chris, to say, look, this is what we've got to get done ASAP because of a safety issue. We're proposing we build these things far enough out, so whenever you come widen, we're not having to tear our work up. I mean,
now, and just because there wasn't a whole lot of widening, especially when you got north of kind of the Berkeley area, that most of it was more of a repave and a redo. But, you know, text us on the list. We need to follow up with them on the Atkins Creek anyway, so we'll just kind of get an update on all the projects they have going through the city, what the current timeline is, because the latest that we have on 149 was a 2024 bidding date. And then 105, I think, we had a conversation with them on Friday this past week, and that's also a moving target with lack of funding, et cetera. But since we have to get with them anyway, let's just at least start with the update of scope, et cetera, and see if we can set up a meeting to talk conceptually what they have planned, what they're willing to do, and how we start getting some of these things at least addressed.
How big is the right of way there?
It varies, but it looks like in general. Hold on one second.
yeah, we're just talking sidewalk on one side as well, Chris, right? I mean, that's just not both sides of the street, but
Well, the east side of the street, I mean, it drops off significantly.
they can't. Yeah, yeah.
So it'd have to go if possible on the west.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to have two major crossings no matter what, because you're gonna have to cross both 149, and the loop.
Their right of way varies, but generally north of Berkeley up to 1097, it's between 60 and 80 feet total.
Okay. So it's not as bad as downtown trying to fit everything into a teeny tiny space.
Right. In most of the area, you have some room that if you had a obtain and or look at easements or et cetera, you could look at that.
Okay. So what would be step one of us moving forward to try to get this going, Chris? Would it be that initial meeting you're talking about setting up right now?
Yeah, I think we'll reach out to TxDOT, see if we can sit down with them and figure out what their current scope is of these projects that are going through, and again, get the most current picture of the projects on both thoroughfares, and then ask them conceptually, what is it going to take to get these done? Are you willing to participate? What is the timeline of doing that? Now, one thing else is on their list that has been a high priority and not trying to get way off is getting the turn lane in at 105 and 149. So not right now. I think they're a 2021 start for that one. We don't want to lose sight of it, but
right.
I think kind of wrapping all these together would be appropriate. So
Right.
And then maybe reach back and see what plans they did have before they abandoned them. See if you can unearth those.
Correct. And I remember what's sticking in my head is we had town hall meetings and they had like big poster board exhibits that had better quality to it than currently what Catherine and I are able to find in our emails from 4 years ago. But we'll see what we can find.
Okay. Yeah, and anything that we can do to help, obviously, I would love to be included on that part of the discussion if possible, Chris, if you don't mind. As I'm sure everyone else would like to as well, but can't have everyone there. But if you don't mind, I'd like to be in part of that.
Good thing, yeah. I'll get with Richard and Dave. We'll get at least some proposed times and see who can attend.
Okay. And TJ, it sounds like you and I need to hit the streets over there and get some solid names for these streets. It's been discussed in the past, but we didn't follow through. We need to get that.
Yeah, we got three, so we'll do that. No problem. Thanks a lot.
I think I can help with that. So the last thing I had, Richard, that's not on there, that we're talking about was Cedar Break Park, and you said was it you and Dave took a walk out there, and you were looking at we've got that big open spot for possibly a basketball court for the kids.
Well, that's kind of, I don't know if you're looking at adding basketball court or something. I think that would be potentially popular, but something that can possibly be handled, with the city's park funds. Or at least,
Yeah.
it's at least something we need to look at, be able to price out before, I don't normally come to city council and say, I'd like to do this, just let me spend what I want. And I know that
Sure,
wasn't
right.
that wasn't where you were going with that, but we need to identify a space. Does it mean taking out the volleyball court? Does it mean clearing down trees and leveling a different spot? And then then of course someone may object to that because they like the volleyball court, but they were the only ones to use it, or they like to have a picnic where those trees were. And but I think the idea of potentially having basketball out there, it's a recreation area. I think it would be positive with a number of people.
Where are we in terms of the Parks Board that we talked about forming? Gosh, it must have been 12 months ago now.
Well, I don't think it was quite 12 months ago, but it was definitely an extended period. And it's one Mike and I talked about recently that we need to get back to. So I will make that a high order of making that happen.
Because one of the things that we wanted to achieve with the Parks Board is a more equitable allocation of funds between the parks, rather than people who use one particular park always wanting things for that particular park and the squeaky wheel and all, but really a board looking at all of the needs and the usage of the park to be able to come to City Council and say, this is what we think the budget for the park should be. This is the best way of making sure that the needs of the parks is most fairly allocated.
Did the city ever form the committee? I know they were looking at names at one time, didn't they?
We approved creating one, but I don't know that it's been formed.
I recall, it was just before the pandemic, and then it just got pushed to the side, and that's on me. So I will work about getting those names taken care of.
Richard, I have a list of names that are interested. If you would like, I can share them with you.
I'll be happy to take them from you and anyone else on council as well.
Well, thanks. We've got a couple of
That's
things.
something that Bickford and Champaign were pretty hot to get done, and Bickford left in February.
Late February or early March. I think it was late February.
That's almost a year ago.
Yeah, right in front of the pandemic.
All right, I don't see anything on the agenda for executive session. Is there anything for council inquiry?
I think we kind of wrapped item number 5 and council inquiry together accidentally.
I know, it kind of got started melding together, and I was like, well, we'll just go.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. We just launched into it. No worries. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a moved and second that we adjourn. This motion is debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The motion carries. It is 8:17, and we will adjourn. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.